What is this? There's a new alert on your desktop. The White House has not found a new nonce to run the Department of Agriculture. It's just me, Denard Dale, with a long promised, long overdue, theoretical Patreon exclusive. I'm thinking I'm gonna put like the first one of the month up for free each time. Sunday Jump. And the idea here is pretty simple. This is pretty much going to be a media journal, theoretically manga focused. I think I'm just going to go over everything each time, but I'm just going to talk about things watched, things read, things seen recently. Obviously called Sunday Jump because the manga magazine Shonen Jump tends to come out on Sundays, barring holidays or small apocalypses. And you know, the modern era is not short on small apocalypses, but let's not get too tied up in that. Alright, so. Oh, yeah, and by the way, don't worry, Sam and I aren't getting another divorce or something. I've had enough of those, Lord knows. We are just, experimenting with the secondary offerings here. Sound fun? Sound fun to me. Alright, so the first thing I have been reading is I caught up on Kaiju number 8 for reasons that I'm sure I will figure out because. I don't know, I got nothing. I'll figure it out sometime before I die. And I guess it's a little more annoying when something that, I don't know, you came into very excited for decays in that way. I can't even blame editorial as much as I like to, and Lord knows I like a good scapegoat. Because there's a lot of other things running in the magazine right now that are just more creative, that have that spark. I mean, you heard us ranting about Down X number of days ago, and I guess this is feeling a little more comfortable with more well worn ground. And you know, I guess well worn ground is a good way to not walk into a landmine, but isn't it worth it to find your own way through the minefield? It's a better story. I think you can brag more that way. I think bragging rights are worth something, at least in terms of my entertainment value. But yeah, the hook this time is I guess it could be an interesting idea. His parasite Eve worm thing is actually the spirit of ex dead samurai that used to 1v1 IRL monsters with melee weapons that essentially worked on the same principle as their current cyberpunk Power Ranger armor. I suppose there's nothing about that idea that is by default interesting or uninteresting, but this is paced out through the whole chapter in a way that, in the same way most business could be settled in a 25-second conversation, this does have a bit of a dissertation that could have been a paper, that could have been a tweet kind of feel. And maybe pacing. You know, I wonder if this about myself. I wonder this about audiences, right? Like, how much can you get on something for pacing when it's on that weekly grind release? Like, am I asking them to chain the author to a radiator? Not so much. I mean, I personally am comfortable with all kinds of monthly magazines, monthly releases, etc. I am still holding my wooden bowl out to Vinland Saga every month and thanking them for it. That's one I actually should catch up on for this, but another time. Anyway, the thing offers him a sort of what I assume is going to be a standard secondary form power up in exchange for his life, or rather, it offers to change nothing in exchange for. I don't know, maybe it'll be a redesign. A redesign could be cool. The guy can still draw. Anyway, the other thing I have been reading today slash lately, I guess it's mostly a recap of the day because I am constantly mulching media instead of thinking about my other problems, like this whole landlord drama you might be familiar with if you're into the newspaper or various Discord nonsense. But yeah, all that aside, the other thing I hit this morning was I caught up on Akane Banashi. That one is kind of one of my favorites in the magazine right now, and it's very funny that I, like a lot of readers, I guess, on this front come in for assorted explosions, violence, spectacles, etc. Whatever. And I find myself most drawn to in here this story of this girl basically putting herself through theater camp. If you're not familiar with this series, it's a Rakugo comic. I guess this is the second time that a comic about Rakugo has blown up in the modern era. I remember the author of Sayonara Zetsubo Sensei had that one series whose name is currently escaping me right now. I'm sure it'll hit me as soon as I turn off the microphone, but that's how it goes sometimes. Anyway, this week is a flashback, which is normally a sign that I'm about to press the little button in the top left corner and go check out another comic, but this time I'm pretty engaged. It is the backstory of the two old guys from the Arakawa school when they were rough and tumble young youths, and the story of their mentor, who, for all intents and purposes, is theater school Jesus. Which works because, Jesus is a fun character. There's a whole book about him. Some people are fans of his, though a lot of Jesus' fans don't seem to pay very close attention. I don't know, maybe that's the drift between a work and its fandom, The That's my breakdown of religious history. The Bible has a toxic fandom. They're all over the power scaling instead of the story. Oh, man. The story that gets performed in this installment is called Time Soba, and no, it is not about a time traveling noodlesmith, though. I don't know, if you want to make your own free Boba Bo-ish type comic, there's a premise for you. I only expect maybe 80% of the royalties on that one. The next one that I have been thumbing through is okay. I'm actually week to week on this one. You'll hear about in the next episode because this one is kind of my shit. But I have just read the latest Kagurabachi, and by just I mean maybe 5 minutes before this. We are in the middle of the darkest valleys of Spoiler Town, I guess. So if you don't want to hear about Kaiser Soze and what he's been up to this entire movie, skip along to me ranting about being halfway through Dawn to Dawn. Anyway, Chihiro just woke up after getting got by his former friend slash not so much mentor, I suppose, in the backstory as much as one of the adults in the room, but one of the trusted ones. And if you've ever been around a moody teenager, they get like 4 of those. I think I had 2. I found Samura's turn itself in the previous 2 chapters very compelling. They're doing a good job of building up their whole. Maybe it's a spin on the Ishvalan thing. It's not so much rooted in genocide. Well, we don't know if it's not genocide yet. Maybe it was a full-scale genocide, but more concerned with, weapons of mass destruction and the like, which the enchanted blades are just a fun kung fu metaphor for so far. Well, that, and I guess you have the whole myth of the gun kind of thing, but now I'm stepping on my own toes for the upcoming episode, which will be along as soon as I'm ready to climb into the bleak, blackened, benighted hell of Audacity. Technically still Tenacity because Audacity refuses to work on my computer. I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, this chapter is a bit more of a breather. We're getting right into their pursuit of Samura, but I suppose it's relatively standard in a way. Just Chihiro having the emotional beat of, I wish my friend hadn't betrayed and stabbed me. Which, whomst amongst us has not been stabbed in the back by our blind friend. Relatable emotional texture. Anyway, it remains very readable. I know, Chihiro is in this nice balanced place between style and humanity, which is always valuable in an action lead and is rarer than it should be, even in, or maybe I should say especially in, these Hollywood pages, so I enjoy that. Now, since we did our Down That On episode, in which I guess I read about chapters 1 through 40 for that. And now I'm up to about 95, and I've got to say I am impressed that it has not, for my money at least, fallen off its particular balance beam. I think it is. It's funny. It has that reputation of being pure entropy. I think that there are sort of small story loops in this that repeat in this, maybe one too many times, but they're still entertaining. And I would actually say that's something I kind of appreciate about Dawn to Dawn is that there's a sense of control throughout the whole thing. Like it always sort of comes back to that root of what it's about in terms of, young love, growing up, standing near your grandma, who I assume is going to turn into some kind of FLCL style malign figure down the line, but we'll see how that runs. But yeah, it's remained strong. The whole Vamola thing has. I don't know. I mean, the kaiju thing is, crazy and fresh. I mean, it's a little familiar in terms of how it treats a third, or I guess this is fourth, given the size of the love Nonagon at this point, party coming in and one of the people freaking out because of it. But I don't know. Maybe that's a eternal part of life, depending on your relationship style. Though Lord knows I've only experienced, and I think I've only experienced one real thing in the genre of a love triangle and swore to behave like an adult henceforth. And to be fair, you don't really expect them to behave like adults in this because they are literally not adults in this. And therein lies the conflict. The lions, tigers, aliens, zombies. What did they call them? Serpent men? Serpentonians? They had a very funny name for them. But yeah, they are so much window dressing before those human elements. And so far it has kept that balance, and that balance enhances both. Anyway, because I am an immense dork, I have also just flitted through the latest One Piece. They are currently in Elbap, the land of the giants, and they have done a good job of making that sense of scale feel fun. This is sort of a long-term, I guess, just catch of the fly ball of Robin's backstory, growing up in Triple Hell, having that one giant savior. And it's interesting. I guess they. I wouldn't say milking it, but Oda does take the time to give this the full. It gives you the full chapter to savor. And I kind of appreciate that. I mean, One Piece is. For all that a lot of the combat and the fantasy and the world building is inventive, when it comes to its characters, very into straight across the bow storytelling, and I don't know, you can feel it here. Like it's not quite the Kuma Festival of Tears, but it's a nice human moment, and it rewards you for having read this long, and I appreciate that about it. And it's nice to see, I don't know, Robin hitting this moment toward the end, being recognized as a human again, remaking this connection. It's kind of a bittersweet reminder that we are in the latter third, quarter, 10th, who fucking knows, of this journey, and we will soon have to return outdoors into the harsh glare of the sun and find new things to do with our mornings and weekends. Unless you're an anime only dude, in which case you can savor this for some time. Or you're a Netflix only person, in which case you have a much higher threshold for questionable special effects than I do. But that is my eternal grognard things. Enjoy the fucking things you enjoy. Anyway, because I am a 360-degree nerd, I have also been devouring a lot of things outside of the manga dork spectrum, and I think I'm just going to talk about them there. I think I'm going to try to widen the scope of the Sunday Jump thing. Shonen Jump will be our anchor, and then the world can be our monster and antagonist-filled ocean. We're on the media grand line here. So I read the rest of the stories in the, I guess the anthology version of Love in a Fallen City. That's an Eileen Chang collection for those of you who mostly stick to reading explosions, so, we're talking fiction here. And there is something refreshing about reading something from another era in style, in content, in concerns. More importantly than that, she has a kind of bottomless array of wicked stepmothers. And when it's not crammed into that fable or loose fantasy context, there is still something kind of fresh to it. I found myself getting needlessly fixated on comparing the stories that she translated herself. Did that include the title one? I think the title one she translated. Doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter. And the one, I forget the translator's name, but the majority of the stories in this collection were translated by one writer. And seeing if I noticed any particular differences. One of the big things, and there was even a footnote about it because the editor wanted to call it out, was that Eileen translates this one thing that evidently I had no idea. They tag a lot of characters within Chinese fiction, which is she said smiling, which evidently can be said in a much more, I don't know, smooth, lightweight fashion in the original language. And here there is kind of an amusing clunkiness to tagging it repeatedly in an exchange, but I don't know, I can rock with little points in distinction of that, especially since they took the time to tell me that it is kind of this tradition being ported over. I have enjoyed that whole collection a lot. It's also nice to exist on another wavelength, as you can imagine with my particular explosion-related fixations. Oh, I guess explosions and propaganda and advertising and sci-fi and stuff, but whatever. We'll just say explosions. I do not necessarily seek out a glut of love stories in my free time, and the ones in here are so engaged in their local politics and how the characters are fixated with them within their romantic lives. There's something very real to that. It's probably sad that there's something real to that, like everyone's kind of playing Moneyball in terms of, if I pair off with this person, we'll get to retire early. But that's also what kind of happens in life. I considered going into a personal story here, but I think I'll let this go for 2 or 3 more episodes, or at least into the Patreon zone, before I start going into stories I can be sued for. Long axis short, I used to run around with the heir to this sort of streaming thing, and if I wasn't so into staying in debt, I probably would have stayed there, but that's a whole other thing. The other thing I have been reading, and if you hear a fluttering sound, is actually me sort of thumbing through it as I'm sitting here because I'm fixated on this thing, is I picked up one of those Taschen ad collections that sit in the back of bookstores for too much money. And I mean, I picked up like a new, non-used, for money copy of it because I'm really just on a rocket ship headed to the poorhouse. In this case, it's alcohol and tobacco, 100 years of stimulating ads, and it's a mixture of sort of these lightweight historical essays, which are informative, but there's not a lot of I mean, you don't want to editorialize everything, but there probably would be a little bit of an op-ed edge to some of these. I think would contextualize them more, but they're still fascinating in and of themselves, and maybe it's important just focus on keeping the information accurate, as opposed to whatever the author's crusade of the week might be. That, by the way, if you have ever read anything by me, is some of the rankest hypocrisy you will ever hear from anyone that has ever picked up a pen, microphone, sheet of paper, keyboard, club, wheel. It's hellbound hypocrisy. Anyway, the point is, this is a collection of alcohol and tobacco ads. And you might know, it actually predates my employment history. I like to spin it as, oh, this is back from my Don Draper era, but I think I have had kind of at least since I was a teenager. I shouldn't say lifelong because there aren't any toddlers looking up at ads and going, I wonder what the psychosocial elements of that are. It's just not how you think. Unless you are, some degree of ubermensch that I would be terrified to meet in real life. Much like some of the early advertising figureheads in here. But yeah, this is a collection of alcohol and tobacco ads, as you might imagine from the title. And first off, half of these are insane for the reasons you might expect. You've got Santa Claus taking a long drag and saying, My favorite kids love to toke 'em up. Not literally that image. It's a little classier than that. He's just reclining in a chair with his favorite cigarette after a long night of delivering presents, but it's still something that is, well, not even legal in the Americas today. You learn a lot about there's this fascinating thing in cigarette history where essentially the temperance movement in alcohol is the stars aligning for the tobacco industry. It is their Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa all wrapped up in one. And that brief boon kind of lets them entrench themselves for all time. But yeah, you see how celebrity sponsorships spin things at one point. You see how shortly concurrently or in the aftermath of the civil rights movement, they realize, hey, a few of these black people still have money. We should advertise to them too. And then you get some real subtlety-free Red Fox ads. Or, all right, here's one. Here's one I enjoy. You have two people sort of dressed like stock Black Panthers holding up Newports, and the headline just says, Bold, cold Newport, light on it. And they say, that's not Negroed up enough. Can we dig a little deeper? So the subhead is, Cool ain't cold. Newport is. So, if you want to be at the forefront of the revolution until your lungs give out, smoke Newports. Who I guess are now our unofficial sponsor for the day. If you like Weeaboo Hell, you'll love Newports. Don't buy Newports or any cigarette on my account. I don't smoke or even really drink or anything at this point. I peaked early. Let's describe it that way. Lord. Anyway, that's what I've been up to on the media front, aside from procrastinating Arcane, which, free spoiler if you watch this bonus episode here. That is what we are reviewing after Kagurabachi, and I am actually really looking forward to it. I started the first 5 episodes about a year ago. I'm going to start from the beginning because I don't want to just be trying to pull from the ether. And it is extremely funny. Not just funny, it's extremely strange. It is bizarre. It is a twist in human history that a quality anything has come out of the sort of radioactive vortex of League of Legends. As far as games go, I have never seen one that can pass through a human body like Newports and just turn the person, the formerly smiling, psychologically healthy person that started out playing the round, and just turn them into a really angry, stunted troll 15 minutes into it. But I guess that's the magic of game design. So yeah, I'm not huge on the game, though I do think that the whole Cho'Gath thing where you eat other players and get bigger throughout the round, that was clever. I enjoyed that. But yeah, the show, from my memory and hopefully in my rediscovery, is a bit of another animal. Likes to borrow from that Gendy book of wordless episodes, which I'm down for. I always appreciate these attempts at, I don't know, spec fix cinema verite, whatever the hell you want to call it. Now, before I leave you on this here Sunday Jump experiment, I probably should point out an ad in here that I think is legitimately good. Not for a good cause, but I don't know. This alcohol and tobacco book kind of has me fixated. But there's this one ad for this one cigar brand. I guess they're called Robert Burns. I don't know if they exist anymore because I'm not a cigar guy. And the left hand just says the word question, and there's this giant pile of fucking cigarettes on it. The right side says answer as just Robert and cigarillos because, it contains the kick or aroma of all that nonsense they are after on the left. And it's funny, modern advertising, they tell you never do a side by side, but something about the design, or maybe it's just punchy, or maybe it just has a real point to people that are into this. I guess it speaks to me. So I approve of that ad for lung poison. That is your weekend update, and I do not mean the often enjoyable. I don't know why I took that shot in that one hot dog column. I think I was just having a general freak out as we sprint into eager fascism. But this has been Sunday Jump, your weekend update from Dinar Dale. I'm going to just do these kind of quickie freeform posts. I don't know, maybe rip off the Bill Burr format every Sunday as a bonus on the Patreon. And the first one of the month will be free. This time it's this one. And I will probably go back on that in some way, shape, or form, but that's the plan going into it. If you're into Bro Science Life, let's call that my weekly updates promise, eh? That's a bodybuilding slash body dysmorphia content for those of you with healthy psyches. But in any case, have a great week. Avoid the rising fire. And tell as many jokes about health insurance CEOs getting theirs as you feel like. I think that's a healthy national sport. I think that's something we can all enjoy. We all being me. And is there really a second vote? Anyway, this has been Sunday Jump, an island of weeaboo hell. It's weeaboo hell. Cue zany theme song number 3. Oh, small omission. I forgot to mention Nine Souls, and it bangs. It bangs real hard. It NC-17 bangs. I really recommend it to anyone that likes self-flagellation or likes games, but really more the self-flagellation. Or Metroid, or Castlevania. Or again, really grabbing the handle of that whip and just giving it to yourself. So yeah, great game, great ride, very artful. I'll talk about it longer next time because I think it deserves a little more time than I'm giving it here. And I beat it like 45 seconds ago, so maybe even a little more thought. But yeah, Nine Souls, 100% on that shit.